in case anybody decides that they want to join us later on and they like want to go back and watch all of these. But thanks you guys for being on. I'm excited. Thank you, Mindy and Amanda, for like they were the first ones that responded to anything, and so I messaged them because they're both like really avid readers. And I know Georgie is now. I didn't know that to begin with, but they're part of an actual like monthly book club. And I was like, okay, well, y'all just kind of tell me like what we should do, and they helped a lot with that. So thank y'all, and thank you for being on here and just figuring it out with me. I'm really excited. I am going to go ahead and say I knew this about her as an author, but I didn't know it until this is the first actual book of hers that I've read. But I knew it. I knew what I'm getting ready to say about her as an author because I've read a lot of stuff that she's put out, and I've also watched a lot of her videos. She is a very eloquent speaker, and she is someone who you want to pay attention to. If and when I ever write a book, it will be very like how I speak. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but this is one that I had to like slow myself down. Like I was like really having to like catch myself, like pay attention. It wasn't one I could just easily read. So with that being said, I'm not all the way done with chapter 2. And I'm not ashamed of that, speaking on shame. But as I finish, I will have more things to share with you guys. But I feel like there's so much that I personally want to share with chapter 1 already because there's so many good things. But this is not just for me, this is for all of us, and I'm not going to speak the whole time. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start about chapter 1. What were some of your reflections? And you can just unmute yourself.
Can I just real quick say something? I listened to one of her other books. So it was The Gifts of Imperfection. That was a really amazing book. I would suggest listening to it. But I was so used to her voice because she reads the book. And then I know she has some show or something on Netflix right now. Where she like talks about her research. And so the whole time I was reading, I read it in her voice. Like her voice was in my head. And I don't know if I'm the only one that happened to, but it was like specifically her reading to me. It was not my voice. So I thought that was interesting for me.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I did it with her, and I've done it with whoever. Like if I've heard them read before or speak before, YouTube or whatever, then in my head it's their voice that I hear. So. Okay, who wants to take it away first?
Well, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't even know what the book was gonna be about. I was just like, oh, this might be interesting and help me with connecting with other people. And I love to read, and it's something I haven't done much of lately. And so when I got the book, I was like, started reading the introduction of it. I was like, oh, wow. And it really spoke to me a lot about a lot of stuff from my childhood, especially because I was shamed a lot for my weight and have been a lot in my life. And I didn't really realize how much that had affected me till I started reading some of the stuff early in the book of some of those examples that she had in there of people saying, what their examples of the definition of shame and stuff was. And I was like, oh, some of that I've actually said myself. And it was like an eye opener to me because especially not my mother shaming me about my weight, but I've had family members to shame me about my weight that hadn't seen me in a while and see me again and say stuff like, oh, I thought you had lost weight by now, or you're still fat and stuff. And of course, over the last couple of years, I have lost a lot of weight now, and they've not seen me. And I purposely don't go around them anymore. But It really surprised me on what the book was about, because I didn't really pay attention to what the book was about till I started reading it. So
Yeah.
um,
And going
yeah.
off of what you just said, I didn't pick this out. Amanda actually did. And as I was reading in chapter 1, I was like, I'm so glad that she did, because there's a lot that I want to touch on specifically in relationship to our health and fitness and the way we view our bodies. Obviously that's like my area. So as I was reading this stuff, like that was the thing that kept coming up in my mind. But I'm sure some of my teacher friends can relate to this. And I'll go ahead and share mine because Pebbles went first, and then everybody else can start sharing. But for me, I related a lot to her story about working with children. Like specifically my first year teaching, and as a teacher, you don't really know what you're doing. You're just doing your best job, and you know that you have to hold these children to these high expectations, and you have all this pressure put on you. And when kids do things, you have to correct them. But as I grew as a person, as a teacher, I realized that the way that I did it my first year, specifically, the first half of the year was not good. Bless those children's hearts. I tell them all that. And I'll say, they don't know really. Their parents all message me still that they miss me and love me, all those things. But looking back, I feel a little bit ashamed myself, because I'm like, wow, like I shouldn't have said some of those things to those kids, or like I shouldn't have made them feel that way. Because I as a teacher wanted to empower them. Like I fell in love with them, and like after Christmas, almost my first year, I realized that they would do something because they wanted to make Miss Gruber happy, but that's not the reason why I wanted them to do something. I wanted them to do something for themselves so that they could be proud of themselves and love themselves. And but I specifically related to that part of her job. But as she brings it up throughout the whole first 2 chapters, really. But the thing is like, going back to what you said, Pebbles, it all starts from an age when we're really young. And like, I think that that's really key for us to keep in mind as we move forward.
I definitely noticed like the teacher part too. And then I caught myself because I just read it like before I started teaching for the day, like I finished the chapter. So some of the language and the way that I was like talking to my kids, I was like, how am I addressing this? So like it really made me like already start to like reflect on, because I teach virtually and the kids do nothing, like literally not a single assignment. And then they act completely shocked that they don't have a good grade. And so when I was addressing them, I tried to like not name them, but tell them I want you to do the work because I can't assist you. And then I also like, you're not gaining any of the skills I want you to learn. So I had to like kind of flip, instead of like embarrassing them for not doing it, to kind of like telling them why it was important. And so I definitely got a lot out of just the first 2 chapters in my vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
I was definitely gonna say that the first 2 chapters make me feel like more mindful when I like talk to people, and when I listen to what they're saying. Like I want to be more focused on like making sure I'm showing like compassion and empathy, and not just like reacting like off the bat. Like it actually caught me a little bit earlier. One of my friends called me and like told me like some news like about someone else, and like I did not react at first like the way that I should have, and then like after the fact I was like, I really shouldn't have like reacted that way. And like I don't know if I hadn't have already started reading this book that I would have realized that I didn't like the way that I reacted.
I mean, I'm not a teacher anymore, but I thought the same thing, like how I spoke to my students, especially Jessica, like you said, like the first little bit that you were teaching compared to like the end. I'm like, yeah, that's a big difference. And empathy and all of that kind of compassion and stuff definitely is important. And then just with kids, like my own kids now, I like, as I was reading the book, I kept thinking like, do I say things that could like put shame into them? So I didn't finish the second chapter either because today was absolutely insane. But I'm interested to read more about like the empathy and compassion and all of that she has to talk about.
Hey, Amanda.
Hi, sorry I'm late. A principal called me at 6:45 about an issue that happened at school today. So I'm so sorry.
Well, tell your principal every other Monday at 7 o'clock you cannot talk to her. No, just
So if
kidding.
I didn't work for 13 different principals, I could do that.
I'm just kidding. We were just sharing our chapter 1 reflections. And we all shared like some really good stuff. I have it recording too, so like you can go back if you want to. But is there anything specifically from chapter 1, especially the beginning, that you want to share that kind of
I think for me on page 13, it really resonated where she went back and forth between the difference between shame and guilt, because I think a lot of us seem to forget that, especially at the bottom, where she talks about the definition of it. So and then the shame web, that just really hit me hard too on page 19.
Totally. So I'm so glad. It's like you knew what I was going to say. But that brings us into like the next thing that I wanted to point out. So if you have your book in front of you, if you'll turn to page 13, and I am going to talk like a teacher, please don't take that as me like not appreciating your age. That's not it at all. That's just who I am. But there's a couple of things that I really want us to touch on, because I read this once and then I was like, I didn't get that. Like, I got to go back. And y'all know my attention is not always 100% there. So I was like very into this and like stopping to break this down, and then something hit me. So like Amanda just said, the difference that she outlines between guilt and shame, in my opinion, she does like a beautiful job here. But shame is like us believing that we are a thing, like we are something because of something that's happened, whereas guilt is like you're feeling about the behavior. So for me, knowing what I know about children, about adults, about the brain, about all the things, about women, this to me really sticks, because when we begin to create these stories and these narratives in our mind about, we get these guilty feelings, like let's take binge eating, for example. Okay. So we have this issue and whatever, or like, let's say the Super Bowl last night, and like, we just stuffed like we went totally off rail, whatever happened. We feel that guilt come up, right? But what happens is we continue to harp on that guilt and that feeling, and that feeling creates a storyline, and that storyline stores in our brain, which is where that shame comes in, where we assign a meaning to what happened, where we are not worthy, or I am bad, or I fell off, or I messed up, I am a failure, I can't do this. Like, we create these things, and that's where the shame comes in, where all of those things that all of us have said at some point, that's where that connection comes in. And did anybody else, when you read this part, did anybody else think about your personal health and fitness journey? Like, did that connect at all with anybody? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I think that speaks volumes that it did for everybody specifically, because like she doesn't lay it out here that way, but I think that that's one that's probably like the biggest. Another one I'm going to touch on, because I'm not a mom and I can say these things, is I can totally see how a mom can feel like the shame of, I'm a bad mom, because she's working, she's taking care of the kids, she's taking care of herself, she's taking care of the house, she's taking care of all these things. And she feels guilty because her time is spread in those places and she is spread thin. So she has the shame of feeling like a bad mom. But we know, just me throwing these examples out, we know that, like, does that make somebody a bad mom? No. Like, we have a lot of responsibility. We have a lot of things, but where we make these meanings and where we create these stories is we connect the feelings with the actual like thought about that feeling. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so piggybacking off of that, and I love that she, like any great author would, she doesn't just tell us the problem, she's going to tell us like how we're going to fix this, or how, we become resilient with our shame resilient, I think is the term that she uses. On page 17, she says, if we want to successfully deal with the shame in our lives, we have to understand why we feel it and how it affects our lives, including behaviors, thoughts, and the feelings we deal with every day. So if you don't already know this, if you haven't already heard me tell you this, I want you to write this down or remember it. But your thoughts create your emotions, and your emotions drive your actions. So I'm going to break that down for you. Your first initial thought is not on you. It's not your fault. We are human. We think the way we do because of all of our life experiences and things that have happened to us. If you did not know this part either, which I was going to talk about next, but I'm going to insert here. And teachers know this because we go through like a psychology class on it, but our brains are formed and we take in the most between the ages of 6 and 8. So things that happen to us during that time, that's why a lot of people say like, oh, their first grade teacher is their favorite teacher, or their second grade teacher is their favorite teacher, because that's what they remember at that time. Like there were so many things for the first time that they actually stored in their the hippocampus. That's the hippocampus, okay, which is part of your brain. And during that time, so like let's say Pebbles gave an example of like family members that said things to her about her weight when she was younger, or just all her life. During that time, if you heard that during that time frame specifically, like constantly over and over and over again, that is something that you like, it's like someone literally engraving that in your head. And like you're a child, you have no thought processes around like that's not true, or I choose not to believe that. Like that's something that was put on you without your choice of accepting it or not. It was something that was forced on you. So once I learned that, I really started looking back about like, different things. And I am very blessed. Don't get me wrong. We all can say that we're blessed because we're all here right now, right? But I'm sure if we also wanted to all identify things that happened to us in our lives during that time, we could. And we could see that things that happened during that time are the reasons for why we act and respond and behave the way that we do now. So back to the thoughts driving your emotions and driving your actions. Your first thought is not on you. That's just something that comes up because of what it is, right? But the moment that you start to recognize it again, so back to the Super Bowl example. So I binged and ate like, oh my God, I shouldn't have eaten that. That's my first thought. And the reason why I had that thought is because how long have I had that thought? Almost all my life, right? The second thought, where I'm getting ready to verbalize it and say it to somebody, or I'm getting ready to say it again or talk about it again, that one is my responsibility. That one is the one where we get to change the narrative that we tell ourselves. We get to change all these things we think about ourselves. So the second thought, instead of, I shouldn't have done all of that. I mean, you can't be positive about it either and say something like, well, it is what it is. It's over now. Because let's be real, we know that that's not helping anything, right? Like that's the same thing as I shouldn't eat all of that. Just turned around, a couple of different words switched around. But a neutral thought is where we really start to make change. So it was a Super Bowl and I enjoyed, eating all these great foods. And tomorrow I'm going to eat foods that make me feel better. Like there's no shame associated with that, right? Or there's no guilt that's associated with that. And then that is going to drive our action. Whereas if I first thought, I shouldn't have eaten all this stuff, and then the second thought I have is, and I continue this story and I play it, it's like a record, like it never comes off, right? It just keeps spinning. Then what do I do today when I wake up? Do I wake up and go work out and do my morning routine, the things that make me feel good mentally, and then go move my body and eat all the good foods? No, I'm going to wake up. I'm going to feel like crap. I'm not going to do my meditation because I don't really want to listen to myself. I'm not going to write what I'm grateful for because I don't feel good. My stomach hurts and I'm ill because I still am telling myself that I messed up and I'm not worthy. So then that turns into me not doing my workout, which then turns into me eating whatever I want as soon as I see it, whenever I want. And then turns into me ignoring Jessica's messages when she's like, hey, sister, where you been? How you doing? You okay? Are you alive? I don't know what's going on. Do we see how this spirals out of control? And that to me kind of goes into the shame web when she talks about the layers. Like that was what from like what I know and what I've learned kind of goes into it. But and I know that y'all know I'm obsessed with Rob Dial, but I really think of all the people I've listened to, and when I find someone new, I will let you know. He really does a great job of helping you understand in like 20 minutes or less how your brain works, why it works the way that it does, and how to reframe it. Like he gives you the information, he gives you real life examples, and then he tells you what to do about it. I mean, I could listen to that stuff for hours and hours and hours, but y'all don't have that time. None of us have that time. So if you've not listened to any of his stuff yet, really consider it, because it's just like personal development. Like until you know what areas are your weakest, you don't know what to do to fix them. Like if you don't know that you have anxiety, you just know you have all these things and you freak out and all this stuff happens, then you don't know what to do to help your anxiety, right? Okay, before we move on, anybody have anything to add to that? Is that making sense and connecting? Yeah. Anything, any helping? Yes, no? Okay. All All right, so the shame web, which is on 19, if you haven't made it there, is a really good one. I liked the breakdowns, especially when she talked about social media and how women are portrayed to be and to look and to, you know, all the things. I don't know that I specifically like wanted to touch on anything from the rest of that chapter, except for the on page 30, the definition, and then specifically how she like summarized everything about women, how it connects to women. That stood out to me too. Okay, chapter 2. Who's gonna go first?
I really liked how she laid it out with a graphic to start with. She just hit us right with that wheel, not with the wheel, but with the continuum of shame and empathy, and then the resistance in the middle. And we have higher levels of shame resiliency.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. For me in this chapter, it was when she was giving the example that she had with a friend. And I can't remember what page it's on, but where she said she didn't react like well, it really made me think about like, how do I respond to people? Like, because what's that quote that we just listen to be heard or something like that? Like, we don't actually like listen to the person. So it made me think about like like a lot of times when people come to you and they're upset about something, it's because they want you to listen and really like validate what they feel. And I tell my boyfriend all the time, like, my feelings are valid, but then I don't feel like this made me realize, like, am I actually doing that to the people in my life? Like, am I actually validating how they're feeling and acknowledging it, like, in that way, how she was giving that, and I can't remember where the example is, but it's somewhere in this chapter.
Something about that. Go ahead, Mina.
I would say it's around like 47, 48, where she talks about the connection network, because I have all that highlighted in there about empathy and connection and how connection serves two purposes of development of the social support network and the creation of power interaction. So that, like, that's where all that, at least that's where I remember all that being, was kind of in there.
I want to insert my 2 cents on that because, okay, when I became a coach specifically, I started growing and working on myself. You know, the people around me didn't, but they were still coming to me and we would have like a lot of the same conversations. But I recognized myself getting like irritated in those conversations. I'm like, this is not, I don't want to like, like, this is not, no, you're wrong. Like, you know, all these things because I'm learning this and you don't know. But that, like, I knew I couldn't say those things. But what I recognized, because I prayed about that and I started to like look into a lot of different things, and I heard something, I don't remember what I heard, but it was just because, you know, you're working on yourself and whatever doesn't mean that you can't share that, but also still be there as a friend. And I was like, okay, so what I started doing specifically with clients who had a relationship with me, and I might have said this to you at some point when they want to talk to me and I, you know, out of the blue or whatever, I'll ask, do you need me to be your coach or your friend? Because me asking them that question tells me what kind of answer like they're going to be receptive to hearing. Like if someone comes to me to vent to me and they're like, you know, and they're telling me a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm like, okay, do you want me to be your friend or your coach? Because if you're telling me all this stuff that happened, you know, as your coach, I'm going to help coach you through that and tell you like the reinforcement side of it that you need to hear that we don't always want to hear. But if you want me to be your friend, then sure, I'll sit in this with you. Like I'll talk shit with you all you want to, but at the end of the day, like once we're done talking shit, I'm going to be like, okay, so let's be real. Like, what are we going to do to fix this? Because there's staying in it ain't a choice, you know? And then the same thing in my personal life when people come to me, because I recognize, and I didn't know this, I don't think this is like a gift of mine, but people want to get like advice a lot, or like it's not, I don't remember specifically the wording, but I think it might have been Havilah Cunnington actually, but she was pointing out like if people come to you a lot and they need help, or like you often have had people wanting you to give them solutions or talk through things with you. Like one of your gifts is to be like a listener, but also like a leader in that aspect. And I was like, oh, well, that happens like a lot. And it did. But I realized that just because I was growing and learning, people didn't want to hear the growing and learning side of it. They wanted me to be like the old Jessica. So when people would come to me, just friends too, I would say, do you want me to listen, or do you want me to like help you work through this? Like, do you want me to just be here with you through this and you to vent and for me to listen? Or do you need me to give you some advice? Like, tell me what you want from me before we start talking about this. And I've found because of that, it has helped a lot of conversations and transitions, specifically with people, when you're ready to give some great advice and they're like, okay, thanks. I just gave you like some therapy advice. Like, what do you mean? Okay, thanks. So that's a little part of that too. If we run out of time, I'll just send a new link just so we know. I'll say that was not my reflection, but I'm going to go ahead and share something else. On page 33, whenever that she said that women found it was helpful when they were recovering from shame, but having a group to say, or having another woman specifically to say, like, I understand, I've been there, that happened to me too. It's okay. You're normal. I understand what that's like. These are all like very neutral statements as well, but there's something that I found, I feel our accountability group has to offer that not everybody does. Like I see you guys comment on one of their stuff and you're like, yeah, I totally understand that. Like, I'm exhausted too, those kinds of things. And it does make you feel like someone's in it with you. You're not alone. You're not the only person that has all these burdens and all these things that are going on in your personal life too.
And I can say too, Jessica, I think a lot of that reflects on you too, because I went from a different coach to you, and the sisterhood that I feel with you guys is not what I had in the other group. It wasn't, everyone very tight knit, and you didn't have those people bouncing off. So I think that speaks a lot to you and how you've set up the sisterhood.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate you. What else? Anyone who finished both of the chapters that has something golden to share with us from chapter 2?
I just like I really enjoyed reading her examples about like her conversations with like her friends, and like conversations where she like didn't react the way that she wished she would have, and ones that she did. And it just makes me want to be more mindful, like when I'm talking to my friends. Like I feel like in the past I spent a lot of time like while they're talking, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next, and I'm not actually listening to what they're saying. So that way when they talk, like when they're done talking, I don't respond to what they say. I just say something totally off. It's like I'm talking in a circle around them. Like I'm not addressing anything they're saying to let them know that I'm like hearing them. And so that is like a change that I want to start making, like making sure when people are talking that I'm listening to them so I can respond to them, and I'm not just reacting and then tying myself into it.
I used to also be really bad about that, and it like to the point that it would irritate me. Like someone got done saying something, I'm like I would already like say what I needed to, but I didn't hear half of what they said, and they'll be like, yeah, I said that, and I'm like, oh. 2 tips because of, again, attention. People who know me know that like I am going to be honest with you. Like if you're going to tell me something, and depending on the time of day and my mood or whatever, I might not have the brain capacity to take it all at once. So like you got to chunk it up for me, or like I might have to pause you. Like, wait, can I pause and like tell you just one thing really fast about what you said so I don't forget? Because our brain does process as people tell us stuff. But the second thing is repeating what they're saying. So as they're telling you, repeat it in your head. And then you don't have the option, like your brain is not able to actually focus on what you want to tell them and give them as feedback. But I like that too. And that is something that takes practice. You're not alone in that, sister. I still do it. Okay, so I'm going to send this to you guys, but we have 5 minutes. And this is, I found like a kind of like book guide that kind of goes with the book, but it's not like broken down like as in like a teacher frame where it's like chapter by chapter. It's like a overall, and there's only like 4 or 5 things, but it actually chunks really well to go along with the parts. You don't have to share these answers with me, but I do want to challenge you to answer them on your own. I think it'll be really helpful for all of us personally to recognize these things as we continue to read. And then if you did not know, she is an extremely smart lady and does not have her content for herself on certain outlets that she does not own. She has all of her stuff where she owns it, which means she does not utilize YouTube. She uses her page. And and she's also very wealthy because she doesn't have to use YouTube to get extra money. But anyways, she has tons of videos and resources on her actual website. And I'll share this link with you guys for this presentation, and you can just click right here and it'll open it up in your in a browser and take you to those videos. And then she also has 2 podcasts of her own. One is about Dare to Lead, which is like her newer book, and the other one is Unlocking Us. They both have like tons of interviews with just like tons like awesome people. There was one that I saw today that came out with Unlocking Us, that it was like a couple, and it was like about how what we're reading kind of ties into like a relationship and how you're able to show love and all of that. So I think that's really cool. But aside from that, I'm going to ask if we can all take a picture really fast, because y'all know we got to do that.
Do you want the
And you look beautiful.
Oh, get all the lights on in my house.
Yeah, I'm like in the worst spot, but
I know.
As long as you don't get my forehead breakout.
This
and
is
it's
like
time for
post
food.
workout. Like, yeah.
Y'all, it's on Zoom. You cannot see those things. Y'all are crazy. Okay, ready? 1, 2. Oh, wait. Sorry. I'm like the worst. I'm like, okay.
Wait, should we hold the book up? Let me hold.
Yeah.
I have it on Kindle.
Yeah. Wait, let me open up my.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wait, that's adorable. Oh, Haley, you were talking. You might not like it. I'll do another one.
Sorry.
Okay, ready? 1, 2. Yay. So cute. Thank y'all for your time and everything. I'm excited to keep moving on with you. And if you want to share any of those answers with me, feel free. You don't have to. If you have anything for the next time that you specifically want us to touch on, let me know ahead of time, and I'll share this with y'all in the messenger.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Have a good night, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.